the funniest thing about this is I was in a text group with the guys. We all know Montez does all the beats for the videos. It's really cool, really exciting. He called me earlier freaking out like, hey, do we have to shoot a rankum? And I look at him, I go, what are you talking about? He's like, wait, I'm not the one shooting the rankum with you? He's like, I've been listening to like Radiohead albums all week. And I'm like, I just said the beat. I said I was going to do, I'm pretty sure I said I was going to do it with Josh, because he sent me a Snapchat of him listening to Pablo Honey, and he's like, this is just like sad white boy music. So he listened to all Radiohead unawareingly, but now he got to listen to Radiohead.
Yeah.
But no, but
a Radiohead binge is never a bad thing.
It is never a bad thing. But hello! Welcome, guys, to Us and Our Friends. Rank 'em. It's back. You guys know the spiel. We're ranking Radiohead albums. It's exciting. If you guys watch my solo channel, Channel BK, I do a video series called What's on Repeat with this gentleman who is in this video where we talk about brand new music that we're into. His name's Joshua Kirk. He's the man. He's the myth. He's the legend. Joshua, what is going on?
Yeah, doing pretty well. How are you?
I had a lot of fun. You were just bringing it up, the whole Radiohead binge. It was fun to sort of, I kind of knew a little bit of what my list would be, but it was fun to go back and sort of go, okay, yes, this is going to be structured this way. This is going to be structured this way. We're going to talk about our lists. And if you don't like them, you got to tell us what they are. Radiohead fans or music fans or whatever, we hope you enjoy two different perspectives. But, we just try not to BS around at this point. We're going to get into it. So, Joshua, we're going to start with you. Clearly, there has to be a number 9. There's 9 studio albums by the group, and there clearly has to be a number 9. Joshua, what is, in a way, the worst Radiohead album?
This one's kind of a normie pick, but it's The King of Limbs, which came out in 2011. This is an example of a Radiohead album where I think I definitely get what they were going for here. It just, wasn't exactly executed that well. There's really two kinds of people with this record. People who hate this record with a passion, and then there are those Radiohead fans that kind of defend it as an underrated gem. I'm kind of in the middle with it.
So you're the third kind of person. You said there were two kinds of people and you're in the middle. So you're the third type of person.
Yeah. But yeah, I think some of the production on it's really cool. It's just, in terms of tunes, it doesn't really have much going for it. I mean, the two songs on here that I think are the best ones, like Give Up the Ghost is really hauntingly beautiful song, and Lotus Flowers kind of cool too, and obviously Tom York's Dancing is still kind of a popular meme.
Yes.
I don't hate this record, and I definitely think that clearly this is the album Radiohead wanted to make. It's just they're so focused on what they want to do that they're not always entertaining the listener. Even me, who believes their music is just so dear to my heart.
I give the same sentiment, even though I think the bottom 2 albums are definitely meh. I do think all these albums are really good, and I think after the bottom 2, the rest of the albums are really good or amazing. I'm gonna flip, because that kind of spoils what my number 8's going to be. But number 9, I'm going to actually go with the other normie pick, which is their debut, Pablo Honey. The only thing I really want to say about this album is, as a normal, grunge rock record, it's fine. It is very important for the evolution of them and to see where they come from. It's not anything terrible, but it's not anything incredible. And, if I literally hear Creep one more time, I'm gonna flip the out. But
yeah, well, so does Tom York. I mean, he said it in interviews. I hate that song.
I'm gonna tell you right now, Kevin, this is where you insert a really great footage of the band at Lollapalooza in 2016, and they surprised the crowd by playing Creep, and Johnny's face was like, "Are you kidding me? You were not gonna tell me we were gonna play this song?" It is so funny. He's stunned. He's like, what? Why?
But it's the whole reason he does the Yeah, you hear it loud and clear in the studio version too.
I do think there's actually some solid songs on here.
Yeah.
As a Radiohead album though, it's just very lackluster. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm going to say it is number 9 for me. Self-explanatory. So let's do 8 through 6. What is your number 8 through 6 Radiohead albums?
Well, I hate to break it to you, but Pablo Honey is my number 8.
There we go. We flipped. It's a flip.
I'm sort of like you. I don't hate it. I think it's fine as far as, a typical album in like the Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden era goes.
Yes.
But when you really think about Radiohead's evolution and where they've gone since this album, it definitely is kind of an inessential Radiohead album. Even though it's still worth listening to if you want to learn more about where they were at the time. I mean, I never really hated Creep that much, even though it definitely is, it's kind of weird that like their first big hit is like maybe their least Radiohead sounding song. Full disclosure, I haven't actually listened to Pablo Honey all the way through. And then again, I actually don't regret not listening to the whole thing because the rest of the albums I think are definitely more worth listening to. That's my number 8.
Okay, very nice.
Speaking of albums that divides the fan base in terms of like some people like hate it and others are like, that album is not Kid A, but it is still worth hearing. And that album is the album that came right after Kid A, Amnesiac, which came out in I'm kind of in the middle with this album, sort of like I am with The King of Limbs. It is leftovers from Kid A, but they attempted to, sort of do more different things, and they created definitely a jazzier album, and there are some songs on this record that I think are among some of their best. Like Pyramid Song is great. I also really like Knives Out, not to confuse with the movie of the same name.
No.
You and Whose Army, and actually a little fun fact about this album, the tracks Packed Like Sardines in a Crushed Tin Box and Polk Pole Revolving Doors. These two Radiohead songs are unique in that they actually used auto-tune on Tom York's vocals. Like, they use that processor, so that's why the vocals Unpacked Like Sardines sound kind of anxious, and then there's that voice over on Polk Pole that's just kind of creepy and kind of weird. The second half of the record is just kind of meh. For example, the interlude on here, Hunting Bears, is maybe one of the most forgettable Radiohead songs. The only track on side B that I really love is Life in a Glass House. Tom York's voice on top of a free jazz instrumental it's kind of a unique way to close out both these records, because after all these songs that are just so digital and kind of in their own little world, you have this one song that is just where all the electronics or filters or stuff are literally all just stripped away for that one song. I'm not going to aggressively defend it as one of their best albums, but I just really appreciate it for what it is, and I think it's still worth hearing. So my bottom 3 rankings are not super controversial. However, my number 6, I definitely think is, it's the fact that I have the Bends in this spot. And obviously this is their second record, came out in 95. I definitely think it is, without a doubt, a step up from Pablo Honey. The songwriting is definitely much better, and I definitely think the guitars, like Johnny Greenwood's guitar playing, has a lot more character on this record. I mean, he makes really interesting use of guitar pedals on this record, and on the song Fake Plastic Trees, he actually connected a Hammond B3 organ to a guitar pedal, which is why you can hear it on both speakers. It's like a cathedral in a way. I definitely really like it, and there are definitely classic Radiohead songs on here, like Fake Plastic Trees. There's a few, kind of more low-key tracks on here that I think are still kind of underrated. I really like Bulletproof. It's definitely one of the more chilling moments on the record. Nice Dream, I think, is beautiful. The opener, Planet Telex, is really cool because it's kind of a a bit of a teaser for the more experimental approach they would take on like albums that followed. Really, it's kind of the back end of the album that I'm just kind of met on, like, and specifically the last 3 songs. I kind of think with Black Star and Sulk, you get a little filler, and probably my hottest take about this entire record is I never really liked the song Street Spirit. I feel like that song is kind of overrated. Like, there are fans that are like, oh, this song was my jam when I was, an emo, depressed teenager in the 90s. It's a fine song, but it doesn't really hit me the same way, say, a song like Everything That's Right Place would. There's a certain legion of fans that are like, the Benz hasn't aged particularly well, and I'm kind of, you could say, I'm sort of in that camp. That's my 8 to 6 right there.
Okay, I'm very interested to say my next 3 now. So, okay, so number 8, OK Computer. No, I'm just joking. It's King of Limbs. I agree completely with Josh. I think the reason why this is above Pablo Honey for me is it does feel very... There's a certain thing about it being like the 8 songs and just the way it's put together. And yeah, like I can go on record of saying like a lot of the live versions of this album are way above what this actual album is. Songs like Bloom, again, you know, the whole Lotus Flower, Lotus Flower's good. I think Give Up the Ghost is great. Codex is beautiful. I think it has, like, this album has a lot of good stuff about it. But one of my problems with Radiohead is when they go into that ethereal place, they can make songs that are kind of like not interesting and like boring. And I think these songs are like 5-6 minutes long and there's 8 of them. And like sometimes you get a Lotus Flower where the progression feels a little bit like you're kind of like, okay, like I'm into it. And then there's other times where you're like, what? Magpie, like the drop, like the crazy like there's cool stuff on it. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a very inconsequential album. Kind of like for certain reasons.
Yeah, it's super repetitive, and I'm fine with music being a little repetitive. Like if it's a Daft Punk or something, I can deal with it. But like, yeah, in the case of King of Limbs, I'm just like, nah. I could take it or leave it.
No, yeah, I agree. Now number 7, you were talking about hot takes. I have 2. I mean, I guess 3 hot takes, but I have 2 big ones.
Oh boy.
Number 7 is the 2003 album Hail to the Thief. Yeah. So, what can I say about this album? So, I think this is when we begin the everything from this point on is at least really good. I think this is a great album. 2 + 2 = 5 falls in line with one of the, like, Radiohead, when they open an album, the majority of the time when they open an album, they fucking open an album. 2 + 2 = 5.
Yes.
Especially the part after the main riff hits, and it's like the dong 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 dong. Like it's so. Yeah. It's just you're like, and I remember when we saw them live, it was a bunch of like Moonshaped Pool songs to open, and you're kind of like. And you're sitting and you're all dreamy, and then 2 + 2 = 5 comes on, and then everyone kind of got up real quick, and then they went back to their slower stuff, and you sit back down and you're like, okay, it's chill.
Oh yeah, that's the weird thing with Radiohead. They do that to you.
Yeah, they have like all these various moods and genres, and I will say, I'd say the first half of this record, you were saying something about the bends this way, where I think the first half of this record is honestly like really good. Like I'm trying to remember what is the follow-up to that. Like Sit Down, Stand Up, I think is another really good song.
Oh yeah, that song is really cool. It's like this crazy kind of warped like jazz in a way.
Yeah. They like there's a lot of this album where yes, it's obviously very political. Radiohead's obviously been very social and political, whatever. This is not an album I go back to that much of theirs. It's not that re-listenable to me. It's definitely just one of those albums where I think it's a little bit overdone. It has a lot of great ups, but it definitely, like you were saying with the bends, there's just some songs that I'm like, okay. But number 6 is very ironic because number 6, I also have the bends. You kind of said everything that I said. I Just is like one of the first music videos I like watched and got into. The whole ending where the whole time it's just subtitles, and at the very end of it he whispers the thing and you don't know what he says, and that's the end of the video and you're like, wait, what did he just say to him? And you're like, what the hell? High and Dry, I feel like that's one of those songs where people are like, yeah, we get it, you like that song from Radiohead. I still really like it. I think it's a nice song.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I get it. It's an overplayed, like overdone song. I get it. But unlike something like Creep, I'm not really like against Creep. I was just being funny. But like it's a song that I could still put on and be like, I like it. And I agree with you 100%. This is definitely a lot like Pablo Honey, but very refined. It definitely fits into their discography of, even though it's still kind of in that just like rock inspired sound.
Oh yeah, and this
still
came out
is ambitious.
This came out during the whole, Oasis boom. So
yeah. So it was definitely kind of in that like Brit rock era, which this album came out the year I was born, so that also kind of dates me. So no, it's crazy. But no, I agree with you. I actually think this is one of their more consistent records. I can kind of get through this, no problem. Again, like you, there's a lot about this album that's like unexplainable, of like, it's number 6 for a reason, so it's not like I'm sitting here. It's consistent. I listened to it full through. It's more of just, it's not an album that I gravitate that much with Radiohead. I do agree with you. I think it's fantastic in terms of the importance, and I think it was a huge step up, but it's still kind of that Brit rock sound, and I can only get so much, because again, like, we're clearly sounding like we're getting into what awaited them after the Bends became Radiohead. So, but yeah, that's my 8 through 6. So 5 through 3, we're getting to the goodies now, even though I think the goodies have been this whole time.
Yeah. I mean, spoiler alert, my top 5, all these records are great, in my opinion. So my number 5 is the latest Radiohead album, which is A Moon-Shaped Pool, which came out in 2016. So like crazy. That album just turned 5 this month. Isn't it nuts? This album was actually kind of significant for me. I told Brian this earlier, like I initially got into Radiohead around like 2014, and I was like in middle school at the time. And so I was a freshman in high school when A Moon-Shaped Pool came out, and it was like near the end of the school year when this came out. And just as you would expect, I was just mad stoked for a new Radiohead album. Initially, when I listened to this album, it didn't really click right away. It really only took me like 2 more listens though for me to really connect with it, because I know some people have said, oh, it took me 5 listens to get into this album. It's kind of polarizing in that way, you either love this album or you're just kind of it's fine. I love this record. I do think the strings on this album has easily some of the best orchestral arrangements they've worked with.
Well, yeah, because Johnny Greenwood's over there working with Paul Thomas Anderson all the time, so he's like, well, let me bring my movie score like self here and bring all the great strings. That I agree. That is definitely something where you could tell he's like, well, I do this for movies, I might as well come in and do it for us.
Oh yeah, speaking of movie scores, don't you get any chance you get, the Shining score vibes from the strings on Burn the Witch at all? Because, the Cole Legno style, the strings are just kind of eerie and tense or something.
Yeah, I you know what's funny, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that song, I relate to the video, and I think of like The Wicker Man, which is like kind of what the video's about, and that's what I think is like this creepy village of people, and like the outsider comes in and it's like, oh, go up into the man, and then they burn him and they're all just creepily like that. That's what I get. But yeah, it definitely is like it starts off so like epic and grand and like lovely, and then the very end of the song is like it's like a horror movie, like
it's
creepy,
psycho or something. Anyway, I love the strings on this thing. I definitely think, as far as like cohesive songs are concerned, it definitely is a step up from the King of Limbs.
Yes.
When I was in high school, I listened to this album a lot. Like, it was one of my go-to get to sleep kind of albums. Even though I still love it, like, I don't revisit it as much as I used to, because this album, it's beautiful, but it's also just like hella depressing in terms of the lyrics. And funny thing is, I do kind of agree with Fantano that it is sweet on the ears, but like heavy on the heart. It's the kind of record that if I just want to turn my brain off and I want something catchy, this is not the album I go to. Like when I'm in the mood to, like, you know, pay attention and really kind of immerse myself in this moon-shaped pool. It's an amazing record. All right, well, time for my number 4. Probably the hottest take of my entire list. It's Hail to the Thief. You know, I'd say I have this album ranked higher than maybe the average Radiohead fan. And even though I do agree it is a little bit all over the place and a little too long, the songs themselves, though, are like so good. And I think this album gets a little too much flack. It definitely is an album that there's two kinds of people. Ones that love it, and then others who are like, it's kind of bloated, you know, it doesn't really have much of a cohesive concept behind it. I really like 2 + 2 = 5 as well. Really, if We Suck Young Blood and I Will were like left off the record, it'd probably be better in my opinion. But you know,
I was gonna say, you brought up a good point about the concept. I don't think the concept is inconsistent. I think my problem is there's been times where Radiohead was a lot more subtler and more, I guess, more like smarter with the way they involve certain things. And I think from the title of the album, I feel like there is a lot of stuff that's on the nose and a little bit too much. I don't think the concept is bad. I think it's just, it's like, I get it. I get what you're doing. You know what I mean? I think that's where my problem lays with it. So
I also really like songs like Back Drifts. That song has some really cool production on it. Like, yeah, it kind of makes you want to dance a little bit. And then there's a song called The Gloaming, which, fun fact, they used like all like vintage electronics and tape machines for that one song. I don't think they use synthesizers at all in there. Like, I always thought it was cool the way they utilized electronics and like old school technology in their music. I do think the last 4 songs are really strong. Like Mixmatosis and Scatterbrain are definitely a couple of my favorite tracks in there. And obviously, we pretty much all know and love They're There at this point. That's definitely classic, kind of very percussive, sort of. I think this is the one album where sort of their krautrock influences really start to come through. You start hearing a bit more like Can and stuff like that, which I'm not the most well-versed in Can, so I apologize if I sound totally clueless when talking about him, but I feel like too many people tend to base their opinion on this album on like how long it is or like how much stuff is in it, because really, I'm fine, you know, with an hour's worth of Radiohead, just as long as the tunes are really good, you know. I have no problem sitting through like an hour's worth of Radiohead, considering I love them so much. Time for my number 3, and, you know, from here on out, these picks are going to be so normie. My number 3 is In Rainbows. Their 2007 album. Like, this album is kind of interesting, though it isn't the monumental classic that, you know, OK Computer or Kid A are. It definitely is a very good, very like cohesive and focused kind of culmination of Radiohead. Like, you know, it's cool to see a record. It's like Hail to the Thief, but way more condensed and like less all over the place. But yeah, it's kind of cool how this record is sort of like, here's kind of our blistering rock side with a song like Body Snatchers, or here's our very emotionally resonant and beautiful stuff. I'm referring to a song like Nude, which is definitely one of my favorite Radiohead songs of all time. another record that has pretty impressive strings. If you look at a song like Nude or like Jigsaw Falling into Place, I think it's kind of cool how the song is just it's like this rhythmic kind of acoustic rock, and then like near the end of the song, it's like really grand and kind of like, explosive with Tom on top of it. And it's also really interesting how this record definitely has had an impact on like definitely younger artists. I mean, Brockhampton sampled the instrumental from Videotape on their song Tape, which it comes off of Iridescence, which I think that's maybe the most Radiohead-esque Brockhampton album. If OK Computer and Kid A are the favorite albums for the diehard fans, the In Rainbow seems to be a favorite for, the casual fans that are like, oh, I just like and appreciate Radiohead. I'm not exactly all about them. Like, if you just want a little bit of everything and you want it in just like a solid 40 minutes, I think this album would be for you. So yeah, that's my 5 to 3.
I'm very excited to just go through the list. Like, I'm very excited. So number 5 is probably the most controversial pick. Number 5 is Kid A. Josh is shocked. So,
oh my God, Brian, we're really having this conversation right now.
So let's. I'm gonna get the positive out of the way because I feel like my negative thoughts have to come second. So let me heal the wound a little bit.
Yeah.
This album is very important for Radiohead. Them coming into a new millennium with this album is very important and in their discography. And this is OK Computer was definitely this sort of, this is what we can do. And then Kid A is like, oh, but no, we can also do this. And it was crazy. This album does have some low points on it though. So I brought up earlier how there are times where they do certain things that can be compelling or not. I think the self-titled track on here is one that I skip. I'm not into Kid A. I think Tree Fingers, right? Tree Fingers?
Yeah, Tree Fingers. You got that correct. Yeah.
I'm that song, not so into it. But I will say everything in its right place. Phenomenal opener. It's spacious.
Yeah,
it's eerie, creepy.
That song means the world to me.
Yeah, that's a good song. I think that's a good song. I think the national anthem is this wild rock, heavy, chunky song.
Oh yeah, and then those horns just like
it's a wild
going
song.
Nuts. Yeah, it's sort of like what Black Midi is doing now with their stuff.
It's great, and I do think like Optimistic, I believe is.
Oh it's definitely one of the more accessible songs on the record.
Yeah, but I think this album is overrated, and I said that in my classic review for a Radiohead album, which is my number 4, and that is the better album. And I don't give a shit if y'all want to be like I'm crazy, because yes, Amnesiac is at number 4. My heart was breaking by a lot of what you were saying, because in my opinion, I think this album feels more interesting concept-wise. I think there's rarely a moment on here where I'm not going to talk too much on this. I'm just going to say, go check out my classic review because that's more in depth. And I want
I actually saw you did a classic review of that.
Yeah, and I want people to sort of go watch that because it's not me saying it's their best, clearly, but I think it is definitely their most underrated. I think it should get more praise than what it does. And I think I'm looking here on Wikipedia right now, and like Packed Like Sardines, even though it's not the opener that Kid A was, it's still very weird and interesting. Pyramid Song, one of the greatest compositions and flows of a song I think Radiohead has ever had. You and Who's Army, I might be wrong. Knives Out, Spinning Plates, the weird way he was singing backwards, and it and then like you said, Life in a Glass House, fucking great ending. This album is amazing. I'm not going to say too much more other than you can go watch my classic review, but give this album more love, because in my opinion, I think this album has more human elements that make it more interesting. Whereas I think Kid A, there's some moments that kind of are boring, and that is going to be my hot take. And I think we are now going to move on from that. So we're past that, guys. You already know, like, we know we can't end bad. So at number 3, which I hope when I say this, it's not true. I'm just being funny. Their last album, I really hope that's not the case. If it is, I'm okay with it. That's a Moon-Shaped Pool. God, this album is just, I haven't listened to it that much since the year it came out. I put this shit on and I'm like, this flows so beautifully. Like, it just goes and goes. Like, each song, I get it. It's a little bit too mellow at certain points, and it's definitely a lot more dreamy. Well, besides Burn the Witch, which again, Burn the Witch. Radiohead, when they know how to open an album, they know how to open a freaking album. But like, this album is so lush, so beautiful, so understated. Like, coming off of King of Limbs that felt very robotic, this album is so human and so like intricate, and the instrumentation. And yeah, there's songs on here that have a little bit more in terms of like 808 stuff and percussive elements that are clearly not like human related. But God, this album, this album, it's so, like you were saying, it's so beautiful and so sad. Like, full stop, the it's so pulsating. Then Glass Eyes, that song almost made me cry. I forgot how beautiful that song was. My God. This album is just awesome. Like, this album is so good. I do think Tinker Tailor is definitely a moment where, even though I don't think it's terrible, it is a little clunky, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's how I felt at first.
But that's it.
I love that song.
But that's it. That's my only opinion. I think other than that, like, I mean, I get it. It is a long album, and I can see people being turned off by that. But I think, unlike Hail to the Thief, the moment I just put it on, I just am like, just sucked away and into this. So I got those last 3 albums brought out something out of me.
It's something out of me. Like, yeah, as soon as I like heard you say Kid A was your number 5, I mean, I almost shit myself, honestly.
My goodness. Well, okay, we don't have to shit ourselves, because now we're in our top 2, ladies and gentlemen. So obviously you kind of know where we're going, but you don't know what order. So Josh, what's number 2?
So number 2 probably won't surprise you. It's definitely a classic. It's OK Computer. This is their 3rd record. Came out in 1997. I can't believe it's turning 25, like I just told Brian. Even though I don't agree with where you have Kid A ranked, like, I definitely get why. I've seen other people rank OK Computer higher than this. I mean, when Anthony Fantano did his worst to best of Radiohead albums, OK Computer was at number 1.
Yeah.
While I can't really say it's my number 1, I think this is just a perfect album. Like, it flows so well. In terms of the songwriting, it definitely is a very good cohesive album, and it's also kind of political too, although not quite as upfront as Hail to the Thief. And really, just like the opener, Airbag, is just like, the story behind that song is really interesting, because apparently it's about Tom York surviving a car accident, like, thanks to an airbag. And like, and obviously Paranoid Android's one of the greatest songs ever written. Exit music for a film. Like, they used that song at the end of a Black Mirror episode once, and I chills. Like, this song is now gonna break me even more.
And like, you keep going on about like the really iconic songs, Let Down, Karma Police, No Surprises. Like, you think about, like you were saying, Creep being like everyone knows it. This album has so many like classic Radiohead songs on it. And you don't think that. Usually when you think of classic songs of bands, it's kind of all over the place. There's so many. Like, half this album are like iconic staples.
If I had to pick a least favorite track on this album, maybe Fitter Happier, but yet at the same time,
That's the easy choice.
Yeah, mine, of course. monumental classic, but you know, at the same time, not the, you know, classic in my book. That is my number one, much to Brian's dismay, Kid A. Like,
not really to my dismay. I mean,
yeah,
you know.
like Kid A. I pretty much, I don't have any like negative to say about this record. It's, or dare I say it, I think it may even be my favorite album ever made by any.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's plenty of them that I can think of. Like, this album is sort of like maybe Wilco's Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, and like records that, just mean the world to me and have kind of shaped my taste in music a little bit. I love everything at its right place. It's definitely one of my favorite songs of all time. I don't know if it's exactly my favorite of all time, but it's definitely up pretty high for me. I love the title track. I think the robotic vocals on that song, like, and also that ambient synth interlude are just like, so good. And then also, How to Disappear Completely is a very beautiful, like, I just love like that climax, like near the end of the song. It's just like I am ascending into, space there. And I also disagree with you. I love Tree Fingers as well. And the entire second half of the record is fantastic. Like, I definitely, Idiotech pretty much needs no introduction at this point. I mean, anyone with a PhD in electronic music, you know, better know that song, or else people are going to give you lots of shit for it.
I do agree with you. Even though I don't agree about the album being number one, I do definitely agree with you where once it rolls into that second half, then I'm like, okay, like, here we go. Like, the second half of the album, I actually think is really, really, really well done. Like, I really like it.
20 years later, still one of the greatest albums ever made in my book. So yeah, that's my number one Radiohead album.
So obviously you're gonna learn, like, you all are gonna learn by the moment I say this, but I am so fucking shocked, and I don't know what's gonna fucking happen to this video because neither of us put OK Computer at number one. So let's get into that, shall we? So OK Computer is number two. I feel scared talking about this. This is shocking to me. So this was a very last minute thing. I'm going to explain to you why. When you look at like artists, whether it's like filmmakers, musicians, there's always an album, a movie where you look at it and go, that's their Mona Lisa. Like, that is their perfect album. OK Computer, I think, is that for Radiohead. I agree with you 100%. I think the flow is great. I love the sounds on here. Again, we were talking about so many classic Radiohead songs. The songwriting's great. Once again, I agree with you about the whole not hitting you over the head. It's definitely more low-key. The Tourist, I think, is a great way to end the album. I love a lot of the sweeping vistas. Again, coming from the bends. This is so much more intricate, more interesting, more refined, and just even Paranoid Android. That song is 6.5 minutes, and it never loses my interest. Like, it flows so well. And like, when Radiohead is compelling like that, it's amazing and so great. And I think this is their like masterpiece. And I do think that this is an album where, like you were saying, I go back to this a lot, and I do think it is an album where it's very weird to listen to it like straight through versus like song by song, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm very mad that like you got to talk so much about it, because I agree with basically everything you said. But number one is an album that came out 10 years after this, and that is In Rainbows. So, yes. I was waiting. I thought you were going to make like a comment. I thought you were going to say something like,
I definitely don't blame you. I mean, I had it in my top 3, so I definitely respect why you would have it at number 1.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree about something you said. You said a very interesting point earlier, which was if you're a casual fan of Radiohead. I don't know if that's the case, because I feel like a lot of what you said I agree with, but I feel like that's what makes this album fantastic. It is this well-oiled, it came 4 years after Hail to the Thief. And like you said, this album is tight. You're going to give me 10 songs, 40 minutes and some change, or, 40 whatever minutes. You have to show up. And this album is, in my opinion, like, from start to finish, perfect. I can listen to every one of these songs. I think this is my most, like, re-listenable album of theirs, because like you said, my favorite part about this album is it's clearly about a lot. But from interviews about the album, they even said, we didn't want to try and make it overly obvious. We kind of wanted to just let the music come. And it feels so much more freeing. Like, it's 15-step. Whereas I don't think it's necessarily like the big Radiohead intro that we've been talking about. I still think it's a perfect intro. It has this great percussive beat. And
and
just
then
and just Tom's what happened, and just the way he's singing, it's such a great way, because it's that electronic-y, but it's simple. Then we get to Body Snatchers. thick, chunky. And Tom's just wailing on it. It is incredible. I'm like reading through the track list right now. Like, then we get to Nude, like you said. Beautiful song. Weird Fishes. Oh my God. Like, it's so great. All I need, which I am not gonna lie, all I need is definitely one of those songs. And then a song following it up, like Faust Arp. Definitely are the two songs where I feel like you could sit on them and be like, these are maybe the lesser songs of the album, but All I Need works perfectly. It's so like
Yeah. There's a lot of modern R&B that actually kind of sounds like this album. Like, like, I mean, you could tell listening to James Blake music, James Blake or Frank Ocean. Yeah.
Like, the influence is so strong. And then Videotape.
Yeah, that's literally what Brockhampton sampled in that tape song. Yeah.
I'm gonna cry thinking about this. This album is amazing, and it's the reason why I think I changed last minute is something about OK Computer, where I don't think OK Computer, I'd be weird having it at number one, and I don't even think it'd be like a normie thing. I think it deserves to be number one, because I do think it is phenomenal. In Rainbows is something where I feel like in Rainbows, they weren't even out to clearly make something so different. It felt like, let's just make a fucking kick-ass album and still do different things and still influence and not be over the top and not hit you over the head. It's I felt like they kind of just went away a little bit. They put out this album, and I'm just so glad people love it as much as they do, because I think I'm glad this is not an underrated album of theirs. This clearly seems like an album Radiohead fans are like, this is amazing. But In Rainbows is number one. OK Computer is not on either of our lists, so I'm ready to get shot in the streets. Guys, that's it. This was probably, I think, even more than the Kanye video, this is probably the most controversial ranking.
Are you sure? I mean, you really lost it over Montez's ranking of Kids See Ghosts, which, by the way, I agree with you. Kids See Ghosts is a great album.
We don't talk about that. Montez and I have not spoken since that. I'm just kidding. Joshua, thank you so freaking much. This was awesome. This was so exciting. I was so excited that we got to do this. If you guys want, go check out his channel. I have all his social media. If you want to go check out our actual show that we do on my solo channel, What's on Repeat, we talk about new music that we're listening to. If you cared about our opinions, go check that out. Check out my Amnesiac review if you really want to know why I love that album so much. That's a more detailed review. Like, subscribe, give us your list. If you agreed with either of our lists, let us know. Once again, Joshua, thank you so much for watching. You are the man. I don't care if we disagreed or agreed, whatever. This was so much more fun to hash out with you. This was awesome. Is there anything you want to say before we head out?
Oh yeah. Hopefully, you guys, don't give us too much crap for our Radiohead rankings, especially, Brian's
What you mean? Especially Brian. What you mean, boy? I think that's it. Check out our other videos. Kevin, I'm rambling on at this point. You could just cut this off at whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.